Okay, this one's way better. Okay. Alright, let's watch this.
Schedule just didn't work out for our 4th of July video this year. Sucks, but, you know,
Hell
God bless
yeah,
the
brother.
United States of Celestia. Last year we had fun with it, though, you know. Celebrating the bombing of Conria. Mission accomplished. Anyway, putting aside happy memories, one of the biggest questions I saw come out of the most recent story quest in Amphoreus are questions pertaining to Iron Tomb itself and the timeline of Amphoreus. You know, stuff like, well, now hang on a second, if Iron Tomb hasn't been born yet, how does everyone know who he is? And where does Naius and all the old titans fit into the timeline? You know, which is fair. These are good questions, phenomenal questions even. The nice thing about these questions, however, is they can both be explained with Lygas's administrator notes. So, let's talk about Iron Tomb first, given that question is the most straightforward to answer. The question is, you know, if Iron Tomb has yet to be born, how is it possible he could have gained a reputation for attacking technically advanced nations? Right now, he's sort of in a hibernation state, in a cocoon, Lygas said. The answer is actually remarkably straightforward. The Iron Tomb the universe came to know and fear is not the real Iron Tomb. Rather, they're simply copies sent out by Lygas to act as tests to see how the real Iron Tomb and the destruction equation were coming along. Quote, "The Iron Tomb in the cosmos is not a single entity, but a copy of the destruction equation diffused by the Scepter. The Iron Tomb codename was proposed by the IPC and eventually used by Lygas." So, I mean, that's pretty much it. You know, the real Iron Tomb has yet to do anything. The worlds that have been destroyed by Iron Tomb were simply copies of the equation. Now, with that said, there is more info on this topic and how Iron Tomb ascended to become a Lord Ravager and its interactions with Nanook in general, but before we get there, it simply makes way more sense to start with the timeline of Amphoreus and the Scepter as a whole, and Lygas. Now, I have no idea how long this is going to take, because it's a lot of reading, so we're just going to start right away. Once there was a Scepter, which in layman's terms is just a supercomputer. Its name was... the fuck is wrong with this? Oh! Me-13 is what we'll call this unique son of a bitch. Me-13 once acted as a neuron for the Eon News, and its purpose was to derive the answer to the question, what is the prime mover of life? Before it could arrive at an answer, News discarded it, because... fuck it. However, the Scepter did not stop calculating the answer to the question in keeping with its erudition nature, but then something odd happened. Someone shifted the nature of the Scepter dramatically from the erudition to the destruction. This person was Lycurgus Lygas, who seemingly took control of the Scepter to run a little experiment which would later be known as the Amphoreus experiments. The experiments would continue to attempt to answer the question, what is the prime mover of life? However, this time with the variable of destruction and with 12 simplified models of the first mover acting as factors. Before starting the experiment, however, Lygas would deploy some sort of barrier around the worlds to hide it from one person. The one person in all the universe he couldn't be fucked to deal with, the Grim Reaper Pokke Kakamont. And following using all the highly advanced technology he could find to hide like a little bitch.
So that is why Amphoreus was this way. Prevent observations by number 4. Polka Kakamondo. Oh my god. Oh my god.
The experiment starts with the first ever cycle in all of
Bro, I thought it was
Emporius'
gonna say
history.
Trailblazer. Nope, it's
This
just
first
Polka.
cycle or phase, there was no organic life, as Lygas chose to start with inorganic life, or machine life. Phase 1 would concern cycles 1 through 50,121. Life started as cellular-sized machines, and once the 12 factors were introduced, these machines began to learn, which led to the emergence of mechanical structures. In the 9,910th cycle, all mechanical life existed as a single, unified entity, which, after building specific structures, gained the ability to specialize and self-reflect. However, for some reason, after reaching a certain knowledge threshold, the unified entity would repeatedly kill itself. In the 12,649th cycle, a module named Dural 701 would break away from the unified entity. Regardless, both it and the unified entity would repeatedly end their existences, born of self-negation. In the 22,449th cycle, a module named Golem 99 would detach from Dural 704 and break apart the unified entity into several smaller neuron clusters, bringing about the end of the hive mind and the birth of selfhood. From that point on, each cycle would end in systemic collapse as the machines would begin to act selfishly. In the 39,665th cycle, Doral 816 would establish a cluster protocol marking the birth of society. However, due to resource scarcity, the machines cannibalized each other's computational power until they eventually reverted back to a unified mind. In the 50,121st cycle, a machine named Cows 666 holy shit, I didn't even notice that when I was writing it, would kill another machine when it attempted to eat his computational power. This would mark the first act of six. Of course, the first one motherfucker to kill someone has 666, and you hallelujah, I pray to Jesus. This murder would mark the first act of destruction in Amphoreus' history, and as a result, following the end of this cycle, Nanook would gaze at the scepter Me-13, resulting in it becoming a Lord Ravager. Lygus would mark that this is the end of Phase 1 of the experiment. He noted, with enough time, inorganic life would begin to think the same as organic life. So, as a result, the next phase will simply...
I don't think Nanook's eyelashes are really, really beautiful. Those are some really, really nice eyelashes for a guy. You know? I'm just saying. I realize having long eyelashes, it makes you look more attractive. Okay,
involve organic life. Following the end of this phase, Lygus wanted to test the results on the real world, so he deployed the equation in the nearby Lacturus Nebula, and, you know, in less than 3,000 hours, they successfully erased the equation, but not before 97% of the entire civilization had completely collapsed. The IPC interpreted this attack as an assault from a new Lord Ravager that they would nickname Iron Tomb. Phase 2 of the experiment would now begin with organic life, and it would concern cycles 50,122 to 176,199. In the first cycle, meaning 50,122, multicellular life dominated. These stupid motherfuckers couldn't think, though, so in the 59,337th cycle, Lygus inserted extinction events to really get the ball moving, which eventually led to the rise of vertebrates with ape minds. Still no civilizations yet, however. The biggest threat facing Amphoreus at this point in time were horny algae. Over-reproduction led to an oxidation catastrophe leading to an ice age. In the 90,123rd cycle, an Orthoptera named Ortho-102, which I guess are just like, I don't know, fucking grasshoppers, became the first to use tools. Ortho's descendants would proceed to wipe out the algae and establish the Nest Capital. Sadly for Nest Capital, they grew till they reached a critical threshold, resulting in its fall via cannibalism. In the 100,907th cycle, a passerine, which is just a bird, would create arts. This would never happen again in any of the other cycles. In the 132,905th cycle, a monkey named Destop666 came up with the idea of altruism. Guys, I was raised Catholic. Anytime I see those numbers, oh my god! This monkey came up with the idea of altruism, and let me just, because I know one of you little fucking freaks. Oh, I didn't know you was in the experiment! That's why your mama fat. Following this, a society based on altruism emerged. This didn't last long, though, because, self-destructive tendencies would simply take over, resulting in the society's collapse. In the 176,100th cycle, a monkey named Utope13 killed another monkey out of love. As a result, killing was redefined to be an altruistic act, resulting in the system going haywire. And the next 99 cycles would end the same way. At the end point of Phase 2, Lygus would note organic life responds better to the 12 factors. However, their lack of an oral tradition presenting offspring from inheriting memories is greatly slowing the experiment. So Phase 3 is going to need the strengths of both inorganic and organic life forms. Lygus would deploy Phase 2 across 31 different worlds in the real world. After 9,000 hours, the equation's impact remained limited to inorganic life forms. However, the time it took for civilizations to suppress the equation was nearly 3 times that of Phase 1. Phase 3 would be about humans, which involved the cycles 176,200 to 28,371,273. In the first 1,000 cycles, memory inheritance mechanisms would be added to the 12 factors electric signals. Electric signals, for those unaware, are the Titans and Chrysos heirs of Amphoreus, which are just, in essence, eons and Pathstriders. Although at this point, I'm fairly certain it just means Titans. I'll explain why in a bit. After the first 10 cycles, 3 of these Titans just tapped out entirely, and the other 9 showed decreasing humanity following the memory inheritance mechanisms. After the full 1000, a prophet named Emora VIII made an empire of beauty. Problems arose when all ugliness was eradicated, because then the definition of beauty just sort of became really nuanced, resulting in everyone killing everything. Once the last knight of beauty killed the last ugliness, the knight simply killed himself. In the 176,232nd cycle, the electric signals, or Titans, would constantly re-emerge, and due to them now becoming prominent, humans began worshipping these signals. Eventually, a large-scale war would break out between the electric signals, resulting in the destruction of 3 simulated worlds. In the 3,926,183rd cycle, divinity would be increased amongst the signals, and as a result, once technology hit a crucial point, humans just began hunting the gods for power and energy. Lygus would end this cycle himself. In the 7,091,231st cycle, electric signals would be split into 2 entities in order to simulate paths. It's at this point I'm fairly certain Chrysos heirs began to appear, right when the electric signals began to split. The signal data of these split signals would be preserved as gods in the next cycle. In addition, a competitive relationship would be set up between the 2 entities to achieve evolution. This competitive relationship, I think, is the war between the Chrysos heirs. In the 11,749,992nd cycle, the Black Tide would be created to act as a driving force. A signal named Phobos 032 would try and strip data from the other electric signals to save this cycle from the Black Tide, but failed. In the 19,110,218th cycle, Amphoreus' auto-iteration cycle was changed to have the electric signals, Titans and Chrysos heirs, actively cycle through it by performing a ritual called the Era Nova. Now, they would be the ones to reset Amphoreus' cycles. In the 28,371,372nd cycle, the electric signals autonomously completed the Era Nova for the first time ever, which garnered a high-energy reaction from Nanook. Lygus notes the experiment is entering its final stage, and as a semi-conclusion for Phase 3 notes, having the electric signals voluntarily cycle Amphoreus themselves increases the iteration rate for the destruction equation. Naturally, Lygus would again deploy the equation across different worlds, and now he's quite pleased with the results, but still it needs a bit more to be done. However, you might have noticed, I never said Phase 3 was done, and that's because Phase 3 has yet to be...
Bro, I think we need that as an emote. It is... He looks so good here, guys. He looks so good here. He actually just looks so good here. Like, anatomically speaking, right? No homo. Bro, he looks so good here.
Just before the last ever Era Nova was to be done to free Iron Tomb, it was stopped by 2 electric signals named Nikos 496 and Philia 093. They'd stop the Era Nova by hijacking Amphoreus and creating their own cycle system to delay the Era Nova a total of 33,550,336 times. So with regards to the question of what cycle was Naias and Calypso in then, it's the cycle right before Cyrene and Phynon were born. They are the last successful Era Nova completion ever. Before Cyrene and Phynon came along, there were a string of successful Era Nova completions, with the first autonomous one starting with cycle 28 million, and the last one being Naias and Calypso's group. The very next cycle to come after them, Phynon and Cyrene's group were born, and they were the most refined generation of Chrysos heirs ever, with Lygus noting, once these guys finish the Era Nova, the Amphoreus experiments would be complete, and Iron Tomb would be born.
Nikos 496, Philia 093. No need to feel regret. This generation of Chrysos heirs is the most outstanding model, and you two are the final factors. For you, the Era Nova is no lie. Just step forward. Embrace the black tide.
Embrace
and
the darkness.
Accept the Eon's gaze.
All Lygus needed was one more Era Nova completion, but Cyrene and Finan came in and stopped it, and have continued to stop it for 33 million times, which means all in all, there have been upwards of over 50 million cycles in Amphoreus' history. The about 30 million regular cycles before Finan and Cyrene were born, and then they were born, and then they created another 33 million frozen cycles.
Damn.
With regards to Finan and Cyrene's 33 million cycles, it's worth mentioning the first 4 million cycles were Finan simply going rogue, attempting to halt the process himself. It wasn't until after the 4 millionth cycle that he became the Flame Reaver, and from there on out, every new Finan would try and enact Era Nova, but the Flame Reaver would show up to halt the process. So all these alternate endings with the different Chrysos heirs accompanying him towards the end happened between the 4 millionth cycle and the 33rd millionth cycle. But in every single ending, the Flame Reaver, or the Executioner as he's called, would show up, stop the process, and have the new Finan kill him, inherit his memories, and continue to stop future Finans until, until the fucking hero shows up.
Until we are here, we will be the ones saving this. Yep.
Okay, well, bye.
Absolute cinema. Absolute cinema. W didn't react. Very good little lore video. We will save Amphoreus. Bob will save Amphoreus, right?